There are 7 distinct levels to mastering Japanese, but most learners have no idea where they actually stand because the official level tests don't tell you if you can actually survive in the real world. And after 4 years living in Japan, learning the language myself and making every single embarrassing mistake possible, I have mapped out Japanese based on what you can actually do at the different levels. So in this video, I'm going to show you the exact real-world benchmarks for all 7 levels, roughly how long each one takes to get there, and what's waiting for you at the very top. But first, let me show you how I did it. So it's definitely not your fault if you have no idea what your true level is in Japanese. The labels that we use are just a bit too vague. Beginner, intermediate, advanced. Seriously, tell me you're intermediate and I still have no idea what you can actually do with the language. Japanese is just kind of sneaky like that. There's also a pretty funny thing going on with language learning called the Dunning-Kruger effect, which basically says we all massively overestimate our skills early on. You learn 300 words, order lunch in Japanese, and suddenly your confidence is through the roof. Because here's the weird part, your brain isn't intimidated enough yet, because it can't see what's coming down the track. See this peak right here? Well, Japanese learners sit on that mountain in their hundreds of thousands. I've spent entire seasons up there myself, because what you're thinking at this stage is, actually, I'm doing pretty well here. Why can't I just stay here? Problem is, you've only just stepped through the front door. Japanese is smiling politely in the corner and saying, we've just barely started over here. I remember when I was living in Japan studying for the Japanese language proficiency test, the JLPT, and I first saw this list of 2,000 odd kanji called the Joyo kanji, which are basically daily use kanji, the same ones that they teach Japanese kids in schools. And I just sat there staring at them thinking, what on earth have I actually signed up for here? This is insurmountable. Insurmountable. Yep, that was me starting to slide down the mountain, which is fine, it's exactly how the brain works, but it's also exactly why we need concrete categories, things you either can do or you can't do, because that's what actually matters if you're living in Japan or you actually want to use the language. So I've made this video to help you get through this Dunning-Kruger trip without giving up so that you can make it to your final destination. 7 levels, each defined by one thing only, what real Japanese you can actually handle out there, not how many hours you've logged on an app. And before we start climbing, there is something worth knowing about how you move up these levels in Japanese. Look, it is not about forcing words into your head. It is about letting real Japanese sink in, not textbook Japanese, the kind of Japanese that people in Japan actually use. And ultimately, the best way to get used to the language like this is by reading stories. Stories are one of the best ways into Japanese because it shows you not only the language and how it's used, but also gives you a sense of the culture. And to show you what this feels like, I've put together a free short story in Japanese just for you. It comes with audio as well, so you can read and listen along. So you're going to be able to follow along with the story from the very first page and pick up a surprising amount, even if you're still getting used to Japanese, without feeling like your brain is melting. You can grab it by scanning the QR code on the screen or hit the link in the description. So what's waiting for you in level 1? I remember clearly staring at my first Japanese sentence and it honestly looked like an alien code. There were 3 writing systems all jammed into one sentence, although I didn't know that at the time. No spaces between the words. My brain had no idea where to start. And I'm sitting there going, how on earth am I supposed to read this? Which part is the end of one word and the start of another? Am I supposed to be reading top to bottom or left? Like, what's going on? It felt utterly impossible. But of course, you don't learn all of this stuff at once. At the start, you're just learning how the language sounds using kana. Now, kana are the 2 basic alphabets, hiragana and katakana. There are 46 characters each, exactly the same sounds in each writing system, but they perform different jobs. The scripts are one of the most interesting features of Japanese, as you'll see later when we get to kanji. But once the kana clicks, the country of Japan suddenly opens up to you. You'll be walking through a Japanese supermarket, picking out the loan words, which are the foreign words they borrowed from languages like English, and they always happen to write in katakana. So you'll see things like kohi, biru, butter, words that you can probably get the meaning of just by listening to me say them. So when you start to recognize these words, everything feels a little bit less hopeless. Then you might walk down a neon lit alleyway in Shinjuku somewhere, and instead of seeing random shapes, you can read cafe or ramen, and you stop blindly following other tourists and crowds because you can finally tell what shop you're about to walk into, even the ones that you're not supposed to walk into if you want to go out with your wallet intact. I still remember one of my first big wins in Japan. I think it was probably my first week in Tokyo. I remember going into a ramen shop and looking at all the buttons on the machine and I couldn't read any of the kanji. I had no idea what half the menu meant, but then I saw ramen, and next to it I saw setto and biru, and suddenly I could do something. Ramen set, beer, ramen set with beer, amazing. And that's exactly what I got, and I thought, nice, I'm basically fluent now in Japanese. Of course, and this is the bit that beginners never really believe, you can learn the basics in a weekend. It might take you a few months until you're reading them comfortably, but you can learn them really, really quickly. What's most important is to watch out for the English trap. Now, you will see Japanese written in English letters in the Roman alphabet everywhere, menus, apps, beginner textbooks. So it's very tempting to take the shortcut and say, oh, I don't really need to learn to read kana, but don't do that. Romanized Japanese, it has really nothing to do with the way that Japanese is actually pronounced. Many of the most important features, you just don't get that in the Romanized version. And look, because you can learn hiragana and katakana basically in a weekend, there's really no excuse not to do it. Bite the bullet, learn it early, or you will never make it to level 2. And level 2 is where Japanese really starts feeling like it's yours. For most people, this is somewhere in the first few months to a year, depending on how hard you study. And level 2 is great because you can actually do stuff with the language now. You're not going to be reading samurai philosophy, but you will be making sense of the world around you. My memory of this time in Japan is being able to start making choices for myself rather than just being in reactive survival mode. So an example of this would be a memory that's seared into my brain because taste-related memories often are. I remember walking into a Lawson convenience store and buying an onigiri, a rice ball, and I'd chosen it more or less at random because I couldn't tell what was what. I got outside, I took one bite and immediately got this awful sour taste. It's like sour, salty, very intense. Not what I had wanted for lunch. So I turned the packet over and looked at the label and I read ume. Now ume is pickled plum, and this is one very small word, just 2 characters, ume, but I never forgot that word because it was awful. I hated it. All due respect to Japan, pickled plum is not my thing. Now this is a silly example, but when you are living abroad, being able to make choices like this really does make a difference in your day-to-day life and starts to make the place feel a bit like home. So now instead of just decoding sounds, you are actually reading for meaning. What's in this rice ball that I'm about to buy? Because a few kanji characters as well will start jumping out at you. Now, what is kanji? Well, kanji is writing system number 3. There are literally thousands of these things. They come from Chinese characters originally. They are hiding in every sentence you will read in Japanese, but you are picking up the simplest ones in level 2. Sun, mountain, river, person, big, very simple characters that pretty much look like what they mean. And if you've done your job properly and you've learned to read hiragana, you start thanking yourself now because, well, look, this kanji, for example, it means whale, not the most common word you might think unless you go to certain restaurants where actually you eat it quite a lot. But how are you supposed to pronounce this kanji? How are you supposed to know that it's pronounced kujira? Well, sometimes Japanese will spell out the pronunciation above the kanji using, guess what? That's right, hiragana. In this situation, it's actually called furigana, and it helps you read the kanji. Now, you don't get this all the time, and to be honest, not even a lot of the time, but it's often there, and it's great because it's a real kick when you can start to read Japanese using Japanese. See what I mean? So anyway, now you can read a menu at a ramen place in Asakusa, you can check the warning labels on a Lawson rice ball, and you can navigate Takeshita-dori for some shopping and experiences. Not exactly reading novels, but you are reading the city. And if you spent any time in Japan, the first kanji that you really learn are the train signs, because you're using them every single day, trying to work out the fast train versus the local train. You kind of need to know this stuff before the doors close on your bag. Like most new English teachers in Japan, the trains were where I felt like I finally started to get a grip of the language here and the meaning is starting to open up. But this is also where the cracks start to show, because reading signs is one thing, trying to speak to an actual human, level 3 has plans for you, my friend.
何時に来ますかっていう意味です。あ、わかりました。来週の金曜日、夕方6時でお願いします。
This is where Japanese starts getting very real. It's roughly a year of consistent study to land here, maybe a bit more. It's probably about a year for me. And up until now, things have probably gone pretty well for you. You can fire off a text to a friend saying simple things in hiragana like mata ashita, see you tomorrow. You can ask for directions, book a table in a restaurant, maybe do a bit of small talk, and instead of just Japan, good, sushi, nice, you're now saying things like, what are you doing this weekend? tiny conversations will start to happen and you're thinking to yourself, hey, maybe this whole Japanese thing might actually work out. And then one day you sit next to two native speakers having a chat and you realize you can't follow a single word.
難しい、むずい、面白い、おもろい、気持ち悪い、キモい。
Real Japanese between real people is a completely different animal. And to be fair, there's nothing unique about Japanese here. Every language has this. It's the difference between textbook language and real spoken language. Words get squashed, half the grammar disappears into thin air. Conversations turn into sounds and nods because Japanese people trail off all the time. One guy asks, so how about lunch tomorrow? And the other guy gets all polite.
If you need to decline this invitation, a typical response would be すいません、明日はちょっと and the sentence trails off.
And that is Japanese for no, I have plans. In Japan, the caricature is that you never use the word no. And to an extent, that's true. It's all very polite, very confusing, and relies entirely on context clues that you probably have no idea about yet, because up until this point, you've not really been spending enough time talking meaningfully with people to understand the context. I remember hitting this wall in Tokyo after a couple of years of traditional study, classes, flashcards, textbooks, and I had two specific problems. First of all, whenever I came to speak the language, I couldn't speak in complete thoughts and sentences. It was quite challenging. And the second thing that happened is that the moment someone would reply to me, I'd just panic because although I could understand a lot of the words that I would hear, it was somehow just very difficult to understand what they were actually saying. The Japanese that I had studied didn't sound like the language that people actually used. I hadn't trained myself to deal with real daily language. Meanwhile, on my commute, I'd gone from train signs to drilling kanji flashcards, trying to make them stick. And this was this endless loop of learning and forgetting, like pouring water into a bucket full of holes. So level 3 feels hard. Good, it's supposed to. It means that you're in the messy middle of, I don't know if I'm ever going to understand this. The encouraging part, though, should be that people will stop treating you like a complete, clueless, confused tourist. And if you can stick it out to level 4, well, level 4 is the one. For most people, this is the dream level to get to. And if I told you that up front, you just ask, well, okay, how do I get to level 4? Which makes for a much shorter video, but also a much worse one, because for most people, see, level 4 is the reason that they started learning Japanese in the first place. At level 4, the exciting stuff unlocks. You start to be able to understand and enjoy real native entertainment, the stuff that people in Japan actually watch. Personally, I used to love watching these silly travel shows where a Japanese person would go to some random village in the mountains somewhere and walk around, trying all the local foods, picking vegetables out of fields, talking to locals, looking completely shocked and ecstatically happy at absolutely everything. All very simple, but very interesting for me because I loved traveling around Japan and it was all pretty simple language. I could easily watch something like this for an hour and not even notice that I was doing it in Japanese. Now, don't get me wrong, you are not going full out on complex political thrillers with zero help just yet, but you can start to ditch the English subtitles, and not that you get them anyway in Japan, but and watch stuff completely in Japanese and follow along. And it's a big confidence boost. It's also a big watershed moment because you're now getting huge amounts of input in Japanese, which is necessary in order to get to the later stages. For most learners, this is a realistic level to get to. It's an achievable milestone that you can get to even without living in Japan because it unlocks Japanese content. You can start to operate in Japanese, not just treat it as an object of study. It probably takes you 2 to 3 years to get here comfortably if you're fitting this around your normal life, but hey, you chose Japanese. If you don't live in Japan, a good tip for you here is to start a separate YouTube account just for Japanese things. You can open up as many profiles as you want on YouTube. You might not know that, but you can do this in Japanese and the algorithm will quickly learn what things you like to watch. And before you know it, your entire homepage is in Japanese. This is going to help you get a lot of the immersion that you might not be able to get through regular TV. But be warned, level 4 is so nice, it's really nice, and it kind of wants to keep you there forever. And plenty of learners just settle here, in fact, and you wouldn't be alone. But if you're hungry for more, level 5 is where Japanese stops being entertainment and starts becoming real life. Because now you can actually live much of your life in Japanese, and for many learners this lands somewhere around years 3 to 5, give or take. You can sort out real problems, you can explain something that went wrong, you can jump in a taxi and end up having a 20-minute conversation with the driver. about his family, his back pain where he grew up, and why summers just aren't what they used to be. Your Japanese will start sounding different too. You can tell stories, give nuanced opinions, and say things like, honestly, I thought it would be awful, but it actually turned out all right in the end. And you're far from perfect, but you can communicate confidently. This is, however, also where Japanese starts showing its sneaky, subtle side, because suddenly you start to realize at this level that there are 10 different ways to say the same thing. And you're sitting there, red-faced, thinking, oh no, did I just cross a line? Did I just drop my polite forms too early? Am I in trouble?
わからない。わかりません。わかりかねます。存じ上げません。申し訳ありませんが、存じ上げません。大変申し訳ありませんが、存じ上げません。
And then somebody mentioned something called pitch accents, those tiny invisible rises and drop in pitch that instantly give away whether you sound natural or not. And I'll be honest, when I lived in Japan, no one even mentioned this thing to me. It wasn't until many years later that I realized everything I didn't know. But don't panic, that is a total future you problem. How much you can read at this stage really depends on how seriously you took your kanji study for the first few years. If you worked hard at it, then you can start reading books in Japanese. Non-fiction and self-help are a good place to start because they tend not to be too complicated. Magazines and manga for sure, or if you want an easier way, and you can pick up a book of my short stories, which obviously I didn't have back then because if I would, well, that would have been totally weird, but I wish I did. Here's the thing though, at this level, you've hit something called the intermediate plateau. It's a well-known phenomenon among language learners. It's a little bit like walking through an endless desert. You have a lot to learn still, but a lot of the quick wins that you used to get at the beginning, well, they've gone. You can learn and study a whole bunch of stuff, but not feel at all like you're improving anymore. You have your sights set on reading comfortably in Japanese and following fast native conversations, but that still feels like a long way off. The intermediate plateau is incredibly frustrating, but also completely normal. My one big piece of advice here is to start reading as much as possible. Reading is what unlocks the higher levels in any language, and if you haven't learned kanji properly yet, now's the time to do it. But also look, at this level, you don't have to push any higher. At this level, you can have Japanese friends, you can travel comfortably around Japan, you can enjoy Japanese entertainment, you are winning. But if you want Japanese to become how you actually earn a living, how you think, how you see the world, well, that's level 6 that you got to get to, and this language really has no end because Japanese stops teaching you and starts testing you. And we're talking many years of full immersion to get here. You think, I speak Japanese now, and then surprise, surprise, somebody from Osaka opens their mouth.
ありがとう。おおきに。お母さん。おかん。ダメ。あかん。とても。
Huh? Well, congratulations, you've unlocked the next level of Japanese, and it's no hobby anymore. You can follow incredibly fast speakers, even loud group conversations where everyone's talking over each other. Catch the jokes, you get the sarcasm, you use slang that didn't even exist 5 years ago. You can actually make native speakers laugh, which is no small feat in Japan because their humor is probably nothing like yours.
デビット、髪の毛切ったの、可愛いでしょ？
どうでしょう？可愛い？それとも怖い？可愛い？怖い？怖い？怖い？どっちだ？
Yeah, you can do a lot better than that guy. You'll even start to understand regional dialects like Kansai Ben or Hakata Ben.
じゃあ、
ほな、
じゃあはほなって言うんですね。
じゃあはほなって言うねんな。
へえ。
ほー。
You can read almost anything now too, as long as you learnt that kanji. And you did learn that kanji, didn't you? But to be honest, even if you did, it's not enough because you suddenly find yourself getting 16 terrifying kanji thrown at you randomly on a Tuesday afternoon on a handwritten restaurant menu or a government tax form, and yet again you are totally stumped. Yet at this level, kanji gets very complicated very quickly. But if you're living in Japan, if you're working entirely in the language, well, that's a good thing because now you can argue your case in a meeting, you can disagree politely, you can have your opinion taken seriously. In other words, you're no longer just the foreigner who speaks Japanese, you're a Japanese speaker who happens to be foreign.
考えの結果、お願いします。はい。
出せますね。
出せますか。やったー。何があるんですかね。
何がいいの？
南部美人に青物。
Those are hard-won bragging rights, and if I'm being honest, I'm not really sure I ever reached this level myself in Japanese. I only glimpsed it from the outside, like looking through a shop window. One of my big regrets is that I left Japan right when I was finding my feet and making huge strides in Japanese. But life choices, eh? And look, getting to level 6 in Japanese is a life decision. Your friends, your relationships, your podcasts, the voice in your head when you're stuck in traffic, it all has to be Japanese to get here. And many foreigners who live in Japan never reach this level, especially if they're English teachers or work in a foreign company, or if they're married to a Japanese spouse who speaks really good English, and especially if they never really get to grips with reading and with reading kanji. Like any language, to reach these levels, you really have to make it your entire environment. But there is still one level above this. And here we are at the top of Mount Awesome, feeling pretty pleased with yourself. You can switch registers on a dime, you can chat with a 5-year-old, a CEO, a farmer in the countryside, and sound natural to all of them. My friend, this is not fluency. Fluency was level 6. Level 7 is something stranger. You might have seen YouTubers like my buddy Matt vs Japan who pretty much live in this zone.
で、そこでですね、ちょっとまあ字幕とかつければいいじゃんっていう人が、出てくるのかもしれないんですけれども、でも字幕をつけるっていう作業はね、ものすごくめんどくさくて大変なんですよね。
And if you want to be like them, well look, Japanese needs to become your entire life. We're talking about mastering the tiny things that still give even brilliant learners away. Nuanced word choices, politeness, pitch accents. Yep, Japanese people can often hear within seconds that you didn't grow up there, even when your grammar happens to be flawless. But you're so good at this point that you could catch a university lecture, then go home and read some Japanese literature. In fact, you could literally teach yourself a new language using Japanese instead of English. It isn't a second language anymore, it just sits beside your first. Now, is this worth chasing? For almost everybody, probably not. We're talking a decade of full immersion in Japanese. You're probably living in Japan, probably having a career there. Meanwhile, you could be learning 5 other languages or doing something completely different with your life. It's a lifestyle choice, not a study goal. If Japan is the be-all and end-all for you, if you live there and have a family, then yeah, it's probably worth pursuing this. But make no mistake, Japanese is a difficult language, and reaching level 7 is considerably harder and takes a lot longer than many other more familiar languages like Spanish or French. You certainly should not feel inferior for not reaching these levels just because some guy that you watch on YouTube has dedicated their entire life to it. From my experience, reaching level 4 or 5 was actually the most meaningful because that's where I could spend time in Japan, talk to anybody, travel around the country. I'd cross the threshold. And the satisfaction of having local people be genuinely surprised that you speak Japanese and grateful that you've made the effort and talk to you about their story, that is the nicest part for the ego. For me, the magic was catching a local bus in the north of Japan in the winter, getting into a hot spring with snow falling on my head, chatting with the locals while every other tourist hasn't got a clue. That was worth it, that's for sure. But if you want to get there without wasting years on the mountain or the messy middle, well, you should watch this next video where I show you step by step exactly how I would learn Japanese if I could start all over again right now. Don't miss it.